Hello everyone, STheHero here. So since even before set 14 was even released onto PvE, I've been working on the document to record all sorts of information, from comp lists to the best items for every unit, to the best artifact holders, and even some extra stuff like a ranking of the Anima Squad weapons. For a good week, it was the only public source of comp information for the set, and while many other resources have now caught up, I still have a good lead over all of them. This document has described every single comp that has come out so far in the set long before they've become known. From Marksman Vanguards to TF reroll, to Strategist Annie Fast 9, to Bruiser Fiddlesticks, to Fane Senna reroll, to Divinicore Zed, and more. Even now, there are several comps on there that are not popular in the slightest but are absolutely meta. So if you're interested in being ahead of the curve, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Over the next week or so, I'm going to be covering the contents of this document in videos a little bit at a time, just to avoid making unnecessarily long videos. But if you can't wait, you can always just look at the document itself for free from my site, tftanomalies.com, which I'll be constantly updating and whose link will be in the description. Right now we're starting with the best items for every type of unit, and in this video I will be covering AP carry backliners. We're going to talk about Champion BIS, now that we're finally on the last patch, so no reworks or anything. Comps will still need to be tested a little bit, but as for what items and stuff you want on each of these units, that shouldn't really change that much. Obviously, when you play, it's going to be dependent on what items you hit and the comp that you're playing, but in general, this is like the kind of assumed BIS general. Like, I'll keep it a little bit like broad, just for the purposes of talking about it. I'll just talk about why you want to build in a certain way, and then in any given game, any given situation, you can take from that what you want and work towards building more correctly. So we're gonna start with Morgana. As you can see, 40 mana cost. She hits 2 targets, so her spell works the same way as it does in Stat 13. So she was already a good Morello user / red buff user, but this set she's even better. If anything, her numbers, I think, aren't strong enough for primary carry. They're not, like, terrible, but she's a bit too slow, so I think that, at the very least, she's going to be a Morello holder, but if you were to put items on her, blue buff would be her item, and then something like, Jeweled Gauntlet for her Divinicorp synergy, or something like Nashor's. Maybe even Gunblade. But realistically, she's just going to be an item holder for something else. Seraphine, again, same situation. She's not super strong for a primary carry. She's a good secondary carry. 60 mana cost means Shojin user. And then, otherwise, like, cast more, apply Morello. Zyra, underrated as primary carry. Typical mage build. She's the exact same as Stat 13 Zyra, except she shoots one less little thing at a secondary target. So she only hits 1 additional target apart from her main target. But she does a good amount of damage. Like, I've, again, seen a lot of success playing her as a primary carry this set. LeBlanc. 50 mana cost, awkward. I think Shojin is probably better than anything. As for the rest of her items, she wants a source of AP because she doesn't have a source of AP. And something else apart from that. Oh wait, I just remembered. She really wants Nashor's. Twisted Fate is a passive, gain 2 ability power each attack. It's active, throws a card. With the Kingpin Syndicate bonus, it's just throw a better card, but because he wants him to get as much AP as possible, I'm gonna keep Gunblade on Twisted Fate specifically. I think these like super Ginsu's users probably can still use Gunblade, but the rest might not. Vhagar has a passive. I think there's a misconception with Vhagar that he has to be 3-starred, because he has the, if Vhagar's a high star level, deal 40% true damage. But I think people are ignoring the fact that if Vhagar is the same star level as the target, deal 25% true damage. So he can definitely be an item holder to pretty decent success. Uh, but regardless, he wants a blue buff because he's 40 mana cost. Blue buff for Shojin. If your primary carry, blue buff is like technically better, but a little more greedy of an option. I do think, honestly, that with this setup specifically, he'll actually be very successful. Both of his traits give him AP, Cyber Boss, and Techie. So I think with if you can get to this itemization, this will give him a 2 auto cast, which actually massively increases his damage output. Because blue buff gives him 10 mana, and then Shojin makes him auto for 15 mana, so it'll go 10, 30, or 10, 25, 40, and then Naturals will speed up that process. There's can be an argument for something like Jules Gauntlet somewhere in there. But I think with the true damage amplifier he has, it might just be best to get him to cast more. Like, the difference between 2 auto cast and 3 auto cast is like a 50% uptime in spell, like in his spell. So this might actually be the true BIS for Veigar. Yumi, 30 mana cost. Her amp passive gives her mana every second, and actually a lot of it. And then active, launch a missile that bounces. If there are, and it marks the target. If they're already marked, deal 200% damage. She wants to deal as much damage to marked targets as possible. With Gunblade being nerfed, I'm not sure what you would build. I think she just wants damage. So maybe you can get to something like this, or maybe like an Archangel's, but something that would make her just do more damage. Like, because she's gonna regen a lot, I don't actually think Nash's is super necessary on her, because you're not actually spending that much time autoing. Like, maybe she'll have to auto once, but like, she's like going to be casting like really fast, so you just want to make her so that she just does more damage when she does so. Varus, I think currently tuned to be a support unit, but I think if his numbers were increased a little bit, he could be a primary carry. Because his chain stuns, that's a lot of valuable utility. I think Shojin plus Nasher will make him cast in every 5 autos, and then you'll get those autos faster, and then he spreads Morello well, so he can be a Morello holder for comps. I think there is a place for him to be a primary carry, just not currently. Elise, really awkward 55 mana cost, but with her traits, okay, her traits like don't do a lot. She has Dynamo, which is mana regen, but at least it's like pretty awkward to play around that. And then Nitro doesn't contribute to her damage. So item-wise, she still wants a mana item, but apart from that, she just wants damage. She doesn't have a source of AP, so you really need some source of AP. It'd probably just be like Death Cap, Jewel Gauntlets would be her items. But there could be an argument for like this. Annie, she is a little bit weird. She's a Golden Ox amp. Golden Ox gives her damage amp, and then amp gives her extra fireballs on her cast. However, this has been nerfed over and over again to the point where amp barely contributes to Annie's damage. I think the main value of Annie is to provide supported DPS, and then is her summoning of Tibbers. Tibbers is a extra like unit. It's like a frontline melee. It can tank for her team, and it does good damage. So I think what most people have adopted, which I agree with. I don't take credit for this one because I didn't play enough Annie, but I do completely agree with the sentiment that Annie should just cast as fast as possible. She's 40 mana cost, so similar to Veigar, this gives her a 2 auto cast, and in the setup, she will be actually not a thing about it. If she's not played for damage, there might be a world where it's just like I think this is technically easier to build. And this also is 2 auto cast. But yeah, she summons Tibbers as fast as possible. And Tibbers is an extra unit that does damage. And then Annie also does damage herself. And it's pretty good. Brand, pretty similar situation to Zyra. Both, she has the same traits as Zyra, so he has a lot of built-in AP. His spell hits primary target and then hits a lot of extra units. Because of this, he's a little bit better at like proccing Guardbreaker. So whether your last whether you build like Nashers or like Guardbreaker is like up in the air. But you want something that's well like you want Jeweled Gauntlets to multiply off the AP he has, and then an additional item. I kind of like this build a bit more, but it's all the same. But Shojin gives him a 4 auto cast. Actually, no, it's 70 mana. It's a 5 auto cast. But I mean, it's fine. And then you're multiplying off of having a lot of AP from Teki and a lot of AP from Street Demon. Vex is a weird one. She's been reworked like twice actually over the course of the PBE. So her builds are like still very confusing. She is a 30 mana cost unit, which would mean she was an ideal candidate for a blue buff. And then the way her damage is skewed, she now has this like 150% over healing is converted to true damage. So you actually want to build healing on her. For the most part, that is considered to be like Gunblade. There might be an argument for like Hodge, as this gives her crits and it gives her Omnivamp. But I think the balance intent is for her to have Gunblade. And then because Vex is a Divinicore Executioner, she doesn't have that much AP. So in the past, she wanted to build like Source of AP and then a crit multiplier. Executioner gives her spell crit, so Guardbreaker would be the best item, and this was her BIS. But I think now, what people haven't realized is that her BIS is probably this. This gives her mana, this gives her the damage, and then this gives her healing, which contributes to her retribution damage, which gives her more bonus true damage than she would get from like the damage amp of Guardbreaker. And it also heals her allies a little bit, which is not bad. Ziggs is a typical AP caster. He has AP from Cyberboss and damage amp from Strategist, so he can kind of go either way in terms of itemization. I think you can kind of just go like caster and then like either AP, or you can go Jeweled Gauntlets or something of that nature. It's probably just 2 casting items plus 1 damage. In some cases, you can go for like a Morello. As if you have the Cyber Boss bonus active, he can proc it, or he can spread it really well. Ziggs items are, I think, the most flexible because he kind of like has a little bit of everything. So just whatever you have would be good. And Aurora. Aurora's like weird. I think she doesn't do enough damage as a primary carry, but I mean, actually, maybe after her latest buff, she might, but I'm not sure. I think her spell targeting, so she's gonna swap and summon something, but her actual spell hits in a large AoE and it targets the most units possible in a line. So because of that, she's gonna spread Morello well. So if you need a anti-heal spreader, Aurora's got you. And then some damage to the hopes that she will be strong enough to one-shot stuff, which sometimes will happen. Like, she has like the high base damage, but when she hits a lot of enemies, it's a little tough to actually get to that point. But yeah, something like this is usually considered to be her BIS.